You're listening to STAGR Cast, brought to you by STAGR Gear.
All right, this is episode number 11 of STAGR Cast. I was thinking back the other day, it's hard to believe we're already this far in. I mean, we started, February 24th was the first episode we did, or the first two episodes we did.
Yep.
Which kind of ties it back. So tonight we got Nate Corey and Connor Schellong. Connor was on episode number 2. If you guys haven't listened to that one yet, you should go back and listen to it because it's one of the best ones I think we've done so far. So go back and listen to that. But tonight it's going to be a little bit different than what we normally do. We're just going to kind of keep it round table type, talk about a bunch of different topics, talk some deer stories, some summer scouting, maybe some filming, some group hunting and stuff like that. It'll be a fun one. I think everybody's had a few beers, so
yeah.
We'll keep it mellow if we can. But what I wanted to kick it off with tonight is, Isaac, you've been telling me about a buck for a while now, a big one that you've been chasing around for the last few years.
Yep.
And I think it's a good story to talk about hunting a buck for multiple years, finding him, and all the way to the end there. But he did end up getting killed by another guy, right?
He did, yeah.
But the story with it's good. So why don't you take us through that story?
Yep.
Because I think there's a lot to learn from that one.
About 5 years ago, I used to climb cell towers, and I used to see a lot of country that way because we'd be up on top of big mountains working on cell sites and whatnot. And I remember there's this one mountain that I saw one day when I was working on a tower that just really laid just perfectly. And I always kind of kept that in the back of my mind. I always wanted to make it back there. And in the fall of 2020, I ended up making it there. I had a camera in my pack. I did a bunch of miles that day, and I really didn't find anything that really struck my interest. And but I remember thinking to myself, you know what? I have a camera. I'm going to put it out. The way this place looks and it feels, I feel like there could be a good buck. So I put the camera out and let it run pretty much all that rifle season. I never went back. I ended up going to Maine that year, so I didn't have a lot of time in Vermont. But that muzzleloader season, me and my buddy Gilly ended up going into that piece. He was filming for me, and we checked that camera. And when we checked that camera, there was a little track going by the camera. Like, I'm talking a 2-inch track. We were taking bets on what the deer was going to be. I think I said it was going to be a spike horn. Gilly said he thought it was a doe or a button buck. Lo and behold, it was a giant buck, like a mid-140s, just a Gehebel Horbus, giant buck. And so that really, lit a fire under me. I really wanted to try to figure out that deer. That was the last Saturday of Vermont's muzzleloader season. So the season was pretty much cooked. And the day that I checked the camera, it was late in the day and the snow was melting, so there was no chance of following that deer around or anything. So that following spring, the spring of 2021, I put a ton of miles on in that piece of woods. And I ended up putting like 8 cameras out in about, I think it's like 5,000 acres or so, the piece of woods. It's a big piece. And I remember I found one big rub in all the scouting that I had done. And it was way down in by my truck. And, real close to the access. And, one thing that I really learned about this deer is sometimes the big buck's not as deep as you think he's going to be. Okay, so that's going to tie into the end of the story. But so I had 8 cameras out throughout this whole big piece of woods. The fall of 2021, this past season, going into bow season, I'm checking the cameras, like beginning of bow season, I'm checking them and stuff. And I was going deep where I had a bunch of cameras, and I had a couple pictures of the big deer deep, but it was always middle of the night and stuff. And I could never really find much sign from this big deer, just pencil-sized rubs, nothing crazy. Yep. Well, long story kind of short, a guy ended up shooting this buck with a bow. I think it was 2 or 3 days before the rifle opener in Vermont.
Oh, no kidding.
And I ended up connecting with that guy, actually. And I was kind of sour at first when he shot it. I was like, oh, man, he killed the deer I was after or whatever. But I'm actually really happy for the guy. He's a really cool dude. He's a really great bow hunter. He actually doesn't believe in scoring deer. The deer actually, I'm pretty positive, would be a number 2 Vermont archery buck all time.
Really?
And he just doesn't care about score. So, I mean, you got to respect it.
Older guy?
Probably like 40s,
Yep.
late 30s,
Just
40s.
Old time Vermont hunter don't really care.
He's a really cool guy. He's killed a lot of big deer. But I want to circle back to that rub I said I found near the access point. I ended up finding one more rub from that deer after he was dead, back in towards where I was accessing. And basically, that buck was probably within 200 to 300 yards of my truck every time I parked it.
Really?
He was living right down in by some houses, close to the road. And in my mind, a buck of that caliber was going to be deep and high and hard to get to. And, that buck really taught me a lot, because sometimes I think, the biggest buck in the woods is going to be in the absolute best habitat.
Yep.
And sometimes the absolute best habitat is close to the road, close to a truck.
Yep.
And I think that's another reason why I think that deer got so big too, is because of the size of his track. It was just it
Looked
was
over
tiny.
every single time. Yep.
Do you think he was watching you coming in on your access?
I don't know if he was watching me, but I bet you he could probably smell me coming through, or
He knew where people come in at least.
he knew where people were coming in, and looking back at it, back to the spring, last spring, the spring of 2021, when I found that one big rub, I should have keyed in on that area a lot more than I did. I ended up putting one camera down in near where my truck was, and I didn't even check it in October because I was so convinced in my mind that he wasn't going to be down near my truck. I had him probably 8 different times on that camera.
In daylight.
And a few times in daylight in October on Saturdays. Like, not just like random, like mid weekdays. Saturdays in October, daylighting.
Was he hitting a scrape or he just
Yeah.
cruising through?
Big mock scrape that I made down by my truck near where that big rub was.
Yep.
So I mean, I think every deer kind of has its own personality or whatnot. We've all hunted the deer that just love to bang up big trees or whatnot. This buck did not hook up a lot of trees. He really didn't. Like, I literally found 2 rubs from this deer. I'm convinced that were, specifically his rubs. And he just didn't lay down much sign. And he had a little tiny track. So, I mean, I think the big points, the big learning lessons that I took out of this deer were sometimes the buck's going to be close to the road. Sometimes he's just going to be in the best habitat. And sometimes they're not going to lay down a lot of sign. A few years ago, I really struggled with putting cameras out because I'd have cameras in my pack, right? I'd go into a piece of woods, and if I didn't find like a home run, like scrape with 2 big rubs on it, or if I didn't find a bunch of thigh-sized rubs all over the place, the camera would stay in my pack.
Yep.
Or I think you were saying earlier, Connor, how
exactly.
you struggle sometimes with you find a big scrape or something, and you're like, oh, I might find something better, so I'm just going to hang on to this camera. And then you never end up putting the dang thing out.
Yeah, you keep walking all day thinking you're going to find a better spot, and then...
And you never do.
No, at the end of the day, you wish you would have stuck the camera on that one scrape you found earlier in the day. So
Right. So, I mean, I definitely... And another key point that I want to point out, too, a day after that buck had been killed, another big one showed up on the camera that was down close to my truck. And
Really?
then he was a regular.
Did you ever have that deer before?
Yes, but
did.
very, very seldomly.
He just knew that buck was out of there, and
Something about it, man. But I think that comes back to the point of the biggest buck will be in the absolute best habitat.
Yep.
doesn't matter how far in it is.
Doesn't matter how far in it is sometimes. I mean, obviously if you're in an area where there's a ton of pressure, I think that has a lot to do with where the deer are going to be or the big bucks are going to be. But in the northeastern states where there's not a ton of pressure, like in places like Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, parts of Mass, it doesn't matter if the good habitat is 100 yards from the road or 3 miles from the road. The best habitat is the best habitat.
Yep.
And that's where your big buck's going to be.
Yep.
I think I've struggled with a lot, and Nate, you always kind of point this out. I'm always the guy that's going to go the farthest from the road.
Oh yeah.
I'm always
Every
the guy,
time.
and I live by it and die by it, because sometimes I find the big one way back out in the middle of nowhere, but sometimes I walk right by him, and that's the reason why that buck. That's why I didn't kill him, I was so convinced that he wasn't down in by my truck that I didn't even check that camera that I had put down in there. And,
Easy to overthink it sometimes.
it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there's that mystique of going way back in there, thinking that's where all those big ones are going to be. I've done it before.
Exactly.
I'm like, I'm going to go way the hell out there, and then
Right.
like you said, the deer close.
Like, I mean, Dan Infault, he always says, hunting close to the road is like dating the fat chick. Nobody wants to do it. But you know what? He really is onto something
That's a
there.
good point. I think there's multiple stories of him sitting in like a parking lot of like a hunting area, and he'll go and he'll see a buck using one piece that everybody's walking by.
Everybody's walking by him, you
Yeah.
know. And I think, it's something to think about. Like, people listening to this, if you've got a picture of a big deer, and you're struggling to find this big deer, you're not finding a lot of sign of him. He might not be laying down a lot of sign. He might be closer than you think he is.
I mean, that buck that you're talking about had the recipe to live a long life, from tiny feet to no sign at all, not polishing big trees.
Right.
Because there's a lot of those trees, someone sees one the size of a beer neck bottle, they're just going to walk, well, it's a spike horn,
I'm convinced that buck was rubbing pencil-sized trees.
I think every deer is different. I think, you're going to get the ones that rub ones as big as your leg, and you're going to get ones that prefer the little maple or beech sapling, It's just the way it is.
And another thing I noticed with that camera that was closer to the truck, when that buck was alive, the only other bucks that would show up at that scrape that I had that camera at were 1.5-year-old bucks or spike horns.
Really?
There was only little bucks in the big boy. After he was dead, the next one in line, which it was a beautiful buck, big buck, and then a lot of 3-year-olds started showing up. 2.5-year-old bucks started showing up. It's like the whole door opened up.
The whole dominant
The
shift
whole
in the
dominant,
animals.
and
The
I
hierarchy.
think, yeah.
All the way from top to bottom.
It's kind of interesting how that works. And I mean, I definitely learned a lot. I'm really happy for the guy who killed it, because I think he only had one picture of the deer. I'm pretty sure he killed it a long ways away from where
Really?
I'm pretty sure I was pretty much in the core area of that buck. But
You had velvet pictures too of them, didn't you?
oh yeah, I had velvet pictures of him from the summer. Deep in that spot.
Really?
Yeah, some velvet pictures of him. Nothing crazy. The most pictures I had of him were right next to my truck.
Yeah.
That camera right there.
The camera right there, the one that I never checked until after the spring when I pulled it. But
Hey, live and learn.
yeah, live and learn. I mean, it's definitely something to
Might set you up for the next big one right there.
Exactly, yeah. And I learned a lot on that deer, and I'm definitely happy for the guy who killed it, because he killed that deer very organically. He scouted an area. He told me he saw 2 or 3 scrapes in an area. He said there was some big tracks in the scrapes. He set up on it like 9:30 in the morning. Buck came cruising through, working the scrapes, stuck him with a bow at 20 yards.
Really?
And we're talking 140 plus inch Vermont deer with a bow.
Just got it done.
It doesn't get much better than that.
I hunted a buck a few years ago, the same thing. I was thinking he was way back in there, and I scouted and come opening weekend of rifle season, somebody shot him right down where I was parking pretty much.
Really?
So, yep, in a small little
No
thicket,
kidding.
so he wasn't hanging as far back as I thought he was.
Yeah, the best habitat alters for sure. I mean, it's spot to spot. Like, I got one area where there is good habitat down low, but the amount of hiking pressure keeps those bigger bucks up in that green growth stuff that we've talked about before, up on that higher stuff. But it just alters spot to spot. Because, I mean, if you're in an area that doesn't have a lot of hiking pressure,
Right.
it could be right there. And I think Charlie in the last podcast talked about how that cutting real close to the road is where he was killing some of his biggest bucks. He's killed multiple big bucks in the area.
Yep.
Just
Pulling
not a
them
lot
off
of
the
pressure.
mountains.
And yeah, you get the feed, and they're coming down looking for does, and it's the way it is sometimes.
Yeah, no, and I'll never forget that buck, man. He had me ate up bad. I had told all my buddies, like, everybody knew I wasn't going to shoot a buck in Vermont unless it was him.
He was it.
the only one I was going to shoot, and in a way, I felt like it almost had ruined my season. That I had kind of
got tunnel vision on it.
tunnel visioned on him, and when he got killed, it was almost a sense of relief, because that kind of opened up.
sense.
It opened up a door for me, because I wasn't even going to go out of state. I was
Because
just
that freed your whole season up after
It did,
you got
yeah,
killed right at bow season.
I sent you the picture of that buck. I didn't want to send it to you.
Yeah, well,
I saw it.
because you were working in that area at that time, and you kind of had more connections in that area. And
Somebody sent it to me. I'm like, oh.
You knew right away.
I know that deer.
he was 1 in a million in Vermont for
And
sure.
you thought he was 6 or 7 years old too, so he he had his area figured out pretty well.
Yeah.
Stay alive.
Yeah, I mean, he really didn't grow from 2020 to 2021, from what I can tell from the picture I got from. Though I only had one picture of him in 2020, and in 2021, like he really didn't put on anything. Like he's just the same mainframe 9-pointer, tons of mass, like mid 140s.
So he was at his peak.
I think, he was 6'7.5".
Anything else in that area that resembles any genetics or anything like
No.
that? No,
Like
big
the
bucks
next
like that since.
No, the next buck in line, the one that kind of took over the area, he's a really big 6-pointer, no brow tines,
Really?
with really not much for mass.
I think you showed me pictures of that one.
Yeah, like
I love
he was
Vermont.
such a freak of like nature. Like
Yep.
I don't know, like he just a giant. But I
Yep.
learned a lot. I'm happy that I got to mess around with a buck like that caliber in Vermont.
Yep.
Good experience nonetheless.
I've hunted big ones like that in Vermont, but the only other one that I've hunted that was that caliber was an 8-pointer that I think actually could have been over 150 inches. And I'd only get one picture of him a year on the same camera on like a tight pinch way up high on a mountain. And it was right around November 4th every year, 3 years in a row. And I never figured him out at all. So I was never really in the game with that.
You were on
deer.
one of his like outer routes, outer swings. Never got right in the.
I
good
never,
stuff.
and nobody ever killed that deer either.
Sometimes those big ones are hard to dial in.
Yeah, and he was huge.
It's funny, they all have their own personalities. Some will travel farther than others, and others will just stay tight to their core area and not travel very far during the rut even.
Yep.
Right. Do you think they, like, I don't know what you guys think, but do you think as a buck gets older, like bigger, do you think their core shrinks? Because I've heard that a lot.
I've always heard the same thing. It seems like once they get older, they get more confident in their spots they're living.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're just sticking tight to those areas.
I mean, it makes sense. I had 8 cameras in that chunk of woods. And, I mean, 5,000 acres is big, but, in comparison to some of the tracts of lands around that area, it's kind of a small piece. There's some pieces around that area that are huge.
Yep.
Like, and
Those are probably the more targeted areas, though.
probably, yeah. I mean, he was literally living in houses, I think. Like, that's,
Really?
yeah.
Yep. Just felt safe there. No hunting pressure. Was there a lot of hunting pressure in that area, like that whole mountain range, or were you kind of one of the only guys in there?
So I'd get a lot of pictures of guys deep.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, like
Kind of doing this- yeah.
all those cameras. I mean, funny enough, all the cameras that I had that were like 2-3 miles from the truck, I'd get 2 or 3 guys both years that I had cameras in
Oh,
there.
no kidding.
The one camera that was close to the truck that I had a lot of pictures of them on never had a guy on it. So
Everybody's walking right past
they're
that
just
spot.
walking
Yeah.
right past
It's a
it.
psychological thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It really is.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to think outside of the box, and really, I mean,
Not
especially.
overlook some of these spots.
Yeah, it's making me rethink some of my
Yeah.
areas. I'm like,
Oh
wait a
man,
minute.
dude. It's funny too because the more like the big national forest areas that I really key in on in the southern half of Vermont, it seems like the deeper I go, the smaller the bucks get. I swear, it's like the biggest bucks are on the edge of
Seems like you can pick up a good track right from the road.
right from the road.
Yeah,
It's like the more feed is on the edge, the more diversity of the habitat is on the edge around the houses and
Yeah.
stuff.
I haven't driven down there once yet and not picked one up from the road.
Right
Really?
A big one.
in that area.
kidding.
Yeah.
In that area.
Is there cutting in that area?
Yeah.
There's some national forest cutting.
Yeah, they
Yep.
cut
'Cause
hard.
There's not a lot of that up my way, but it seems like I think a guy sent me a thing the other day that they're starting to do more cutting. They're planning on 2022 more cutting in the Green Mountain National Forest, White Mountain National
Certainly
Forest.
help, that's for sure.
Yeah, what's your in New Hampshire? You do a lot of cutting over your way. Were you doing a
Yeah,
lot?
it seems like a fair amount.
Yep.
Not so much in the recent years, but
Yep.
there's still enough around. It seems like you can get into them and find deer.
Yep, and that's where those does seem to be hanging too.
Yeah,
is
exactly.
Right in that stuff, and those
Yep.
bucks come down at night. It seems like a few of my areas to come right down to the does at night, and then you're getting a track going straight back up.
Yep.
You know, with my
Yeah,
core
the doe
areas.
might live in there, where the buck might be up on the ridge, and every night he might come down, check those cuts, or circle them, or
Yep.
try to pick a doe up. So,
Yep.
good spot to look for a track at least.
For sure.
If there's snow.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn there in that story. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how good I explained it.
I think
but
that's pretty good. You know?
it's hard to
Story.
like go through it. It definitely it stinks I didn't end up with the deer, but
Yep.
No little more for next time, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, every deer is different,
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
You know,
Some might be deep next time. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hunting a deer now in New Hampshire that just loves to shred big trees.
Oh, he's one of those guys.
Yeah.
And that's my
Mr.
favorite
Tough
deer to
Guy?
hunt, man. He's a
Yeah.
tough guy. Yeah, he loves to bang up big, huge trees, and it's a lot of fun
Yep.
because, you know, it's not a ghost. Those big deer that don't lay down a lot of sign are so tough to hunt. And honestly, if you don't run a ton of cameras, I don't even know how you'd kill a deer like that unless it was luck, especially with a little foot like he had.
Yep.
Like, you're not going to track
not
that
gonna
deer.
I mean, you're stepping
No.
over that every time, aren't you?
You're stepping over that deer every time. He literally had a 2.5-inch track.
That's wild.
Yeah, he was tiny little track. He ended up weighing, I think it was 178.
It's funny you say that. I was after a buck for a couple of years, and the same thing. The only reason I know his track was so small is because I had a picture of him walking by my camera one day. The same thing. It was just a little 2-inch track.
Dinky
You
little
never would
thing.
have followed that typically if you were to see it in the snow. So,
Yeah, if you would have walked behind your
Yeah,
camera, you wouldn't have thought
exactly.
anything of it.
yep.
Yep.
And it makes you kind of wonder. So, do you know, like, genetics, obviously? A deer with little feet, are they actually getting more chance to reproduce in northeastern areas because they're not getting picked off as easily? Whereas,
Yeah.
like, a deer with clown feet is going to get followed every time because they're
Yeah.
so much easier to what's the word? Differentiate. I don't know the word I'm trying to say right now, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I hear you.
They're easier to follow when they have big, huge feet.
Yeah.
So it makes them easier to target on snow, obviously, and
Yeah. It seems like more deer in Maine have those bigger feet, so you hear more of those 200-pound, tracking stories and stuff. But they're
Right.
just a different subspecies almost
Definitely.
of deer.
I mean, down in this area, if a buck gets 200 pounds,
Oh yeah, there's not a
He's-
lot of them.
he's a giant and he's rare.
Yeah. Got a chance to grow up,
Yep.
and even some of those ones that get the chance to grow up are only 170, 180 their whole life.
Well, they shot one down there last year in that area that was like 230 something.
Yep.
Oh, did they?
And
Yeah.
he was even,
And
In
he
more
got-
houses.
He got shot from the road.
yeah.
Oh man.
So if that tells you anything how close they are to
Yeah.
the road.
He was in
They're
houses.
right there.
Yep.
Like, I'm talking, that deer that you're talking about, he was in like a 30-acre piece.
Right.
And that was during rifle season, wasn't it?
Yep. Somebody shot him out the window.
Yep.
Jeez.
Sucks how a lot of the big ones go, it seems like.
Yep.
It does, yeah.
Gets that one
But-
week where they get real dumb and
Yeah.
That's where you're gonna pick up a track that time of
Yeah.
year,
Exactly.
too. Is a big buck like that cutting across somebody's lawn,
Yep.
looking for a doe, and then you gotta get up on the ridge to cut him off or
Yep.
Yep.
cut his track.
Huh.
Seems to happen a lot.
It's funny, Vermont. So, like, I've noticed New Hampshire and Maine, it's more of like your traditional tracking. You know, if Vermont, it seems like you kind of have to think outside of the box for the real big ones, because the real big pieces of woods, the bucks are on the edges of it. They're like in the towns, they're in the houses. They're
it's
in,
because of that lack of cutting, I think,
yes,
compared to up
yes,
there.
because the edge is all in the
fringe,
towns.
yeah, it's the
on the
fringe.
fringe.
Yep.
We don't have the edge that's 2-3 miles back. We don't have the, all these roads that lead everywhere.
Yep.
Whatever. I think Adirondack's probably the same way.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, because that's forever wild over there. No cutting.
Forever. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Whitetail, they're a creature of the edge,
Yep.
and if
You
you
gotta
don't
have the feed.
if you don't have that edge habitat, you're not going to find the big deer.
And I think those mass crop years where there's a lot of beech nut and stuff will change that up, obviously. Because
It
I
will,
notice in my area, when there's a big beech nut year, you can get a track way back out, But like you said, you can. In other years when there's not, you're getting a track down low because that's where the does are feeding and stuff, and
Right.
you're heading back up. But yeah,
Yeah, and back to the sign thing, I don't know how many miles I've done in the national forest in Vermont and not seen a rub at all. But once you get snow on the ground, you might pick up a track or two around there, and might be a decent track even, but just you don't see the sign like you're expecting to see
yep,
for the buck you're following or just the deer in general around
Yep.
there. So
I think another reason why you see that a lot in Vermont is the bucks don't have the competition amongst each other, so they probably don't have to lay down the amount of sign that maybe they will in New Hampshire.
right.
Because, it seems like every ridge in New Hampshire, there's 2 or 3 5-6-year-old bucks, where it's like every ridge in Vermont might have one,
Yeah.
maybe one.
Right.
yeah.
So that's where, I think
They don't need to lay down the sign.
they don't need to lay down.
Competition.
Yeah, they don't have to lay down the sign. They have the does, locked up pretty much. They don't have to really work. But
Just something to keep in mind.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so I think that's a good transition piece into some summer scouting. So, what have you guys been up to spring, summer? I know when we talked there, the first episode or second episode, you were on some sheds. You had some bucks you wanted to chase around, find some sheds. How's that transpired since? Take us through the shed hunting and then into your summer scouting. Because every weekend, every 5 minutes you got free, you're out in the woods. It seems like so.
So from my spring scouting, I haven't really done too much exploring in new areas. Basically, just getting cameras out in the spots I've already scouted thoroughly.
Yep.
I take that back. Actually, me and Isaac have been doing some scouting the past few weekends. We have bounced around to a few spots.
New spots?
Yeah, just new spots.
Yep.
Running through them and seeing if we can find anything real good for sign. And if we don't find anything good, we'll head out of there and go hit a new area. And we stuck a few cameras out now in the last couple of weeks in decent spots we found. Makes it hard though this time of year finding good sign just because everything's so green and thick and whatnot.
Yeah.
And trails and tracks and all that stuff's kind of grown up now. But
how many more sheds you find after the episode we did? I think you had 3 or 4 at that point.
Yeah, I picked up.
What are you up to?
I picked up a handful more. It was pretty slow towards end of March or whatever. I got into I don't know, probably 10 more.
Only 10 more.
Casually 10 more.
I think I picked up around 20 or so this season, so probably my better spring shed hunting.
Yep.
A lot of miles, I checked a lot of new areas out this spring, and got a couple spots picked out for the fall. They're looking to get back into, get some cameras out.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, it's tough this time of year to really scout new areas out.
Yeah, you got a lot of ferns and shit growing up and all the old scrapes and stuff. Huh. What is it you're looking when you're checking the new spots? Are you looking on X and stuff before you go in there? Just kind of just pick out an area you like.
Yeah, just looking for a lot of diversity, whether it's cuts, swamps,
okay,
transitions, like green growth to hardwoods, that type of stuff, and we'll often walk those edges, just to see if we can find any good sign. You
do much with like saddles and stuff like that, like high mountain saddles at all?
I've seen some sign in those, but there's really not too much buck sign I found in those. From my experience. There's a couple spots I've hunted in the past. There's saddles, and I haven't really seen too much. Not saying they're not going to use those.
Yeah, they're just natural funnels.
Yeah, exactly. Just natural funnels
through,
come fall or come rut. I mean, you might use those more often than.
But you're trying to lock in on the areas where those bucks are actually like living.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I remember a couple weeks ago you were on a buck that had like a bed that was like literally caved into the ground, weren't you?
Yeah.
You found like his core area.
Yeah, so I was in this couple-year-old clear cut, and there's like a little patch of spruce trees in the middle of it. So I was out wandering around in there, and I just found his big bed.
Just living there.
Yeah, I'd say he's just living out there in the summertime. It was a nice breezy area to get some cool air blowing on him, and you can see a lot around where he was. And I actually stuck a camera out in there, and I had been getting pictures of a couple of different bucks. So
no kidding already.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
They're out picking around in the cut this time of year.
Yeah,
it's like a big food plot for him. So yeah.
How old's that cut? Would you say?
I'd say probably 3 to 4 years old.
Yeah, it seems like that 3 to like 7. Would you say? I guys say 3 to like 7 years. That's the money, the ticket right there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of berry bushes growing in there now, and some clover on the log trails and that type of stuff they like to browse on.
And then even the older cuts I think are good. They're just super hard to hunt.
Yeah, because it's
it's so hard.
Stem count's so high.
Yeah, but I still think a cut's good 15 years after it's cut. You know, sometimes you know, like especially if it's in an area where all the trees are like monsters. Yeah, and then you have that 15-year-old cut where everything's like tight and
it's more cover.
It's more cover. Yeah, it's more cover and more feed and I think they feel safe in it. But definitely, I think the sweet spot, like you said, is like 3 to like 7 years or whatever.
Where they're actively feeding,
living, and you can see them in it.
Yeah.
If you're on the edge of it and you like look up through and you can see a rack or whatever, like in the middle of it, whatever. But yeah.
It's funny you say that 15-year-old cut. So there's a spot. I think it was the first episode I talked about, the one I missed this year in Maine.
Yep.
So there's like a series of like 15-year-old cuts out through, and it's just like 12 foot tall, like just plantation pine and mixed with like beech and stuff like that. And there's this one road that they actually kept through it pretty good, like not like a road that you're going to drive on, but like you can walk out it pretty good. And there's so many tracks that funnel out of that thick stuff. Like they just, like you said, bed. No one's ever going to sneak up on anything in there. Moose beds in there like you wouldn't even believe, and then they just funnel out to that road. I think at night, feed up the edge and go back in. You know.
Yeah, nothing's bothered them in that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You can see like 5 feet in, just a wall. But what have you been up to this summer, Nate? You got anything crazy going on?
Tomorrow we're heading to New Hampshire, set some cameras out.
Yep.
We're going to go check on a buck, pretty much. I set a cell camera out, Got a giant 8-pointer on it last year,
Okay.
and haven't checked it.
Yep.
It was a cell camera. Sent one picture of a giant. What was it? The first night.
Yeah.
That was
I
in the
said-
summertime too, wasn't it?
It was like
he's
September.
velvet,
Okay.
Yeah.
It was
So-
early September.
Yeah.
First night you put it out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Giant scrape.
It must have had you fired up there the next morning, huh?
It was big. I didn't even go there this year though. Didn't end up making it up there. So
The
We're
camera died. Or it didn't die, but it stopped sending
it
pictures.
Should, yeah. So we should have a ton of pictures. I'm hoping.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
if
So
a bear didn't get
scrape
it.
was-
Yeah.
There was like 3 scrapes the size of this table. So
Really? Just
yeah,
just an
real-
area, huh?
Real good one.
But you had one bar of service air,
right.
and I think the connectivity
That's touchy.
was iffy, and it sent a few pictures, and then that was it. So we're hoping that the camera still worked
It
as a
They're
camera.
supposed to save to the SD card, I
Right.
believe,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
The
We're
ones
gonna
that
check it tomorrow.
I've used.
I'm gonna hang a regular camera there, and then probably head up a little higher, hang another camera. And
Yep.
See what happens. Probably hunted
Yeah.
a lot this year if he's still alive.
He was a giant.
Is it an area you target with bow, or is it
No, that'd be with a gun.
with a gun?
Tracking,
Gotcha.
probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm actually pretty convinced that that's the buck that you tracked.
Yeah. What? 2 years ago.
20, I think it was 2019.
Yeah, and then you tracked him
Yep.
today.
That same
But
year.
I got one picture on the other side of the mountain of a deer. It was foggy, and the G2s were probably, I don't know, they were
10, 12 inches.
They're probably bigger than that.
Yeah, it was huge.
He
Very
was a
big one.
giant.
He had like goalpost G2s. Like it was a picture of him walking away from the camera,
just
and he was
one
just
side of the rack.
absolute giant. Yeah.
Only picture you had on that side of the mountain? Of
Well,
him?
I had a bunch of other real
Yeah,
nice bucks.
of
but
that one, though?
Nothing that even came close to that.
Really? Yeah.
And that's an interesting area because I think it's super overlooked because there's not a lot of cutting.
No,
It's a very like secluded area, kind of
there's
a.
not much.
There's not much,
There's some beach,
but it's
That's
not.
about it, but nothing.
I think it's
really.
just underhunted,
Yeah,
and
I think
you know,
they just get age, and
yeah,
there's a few ridges where those deer cross up through there, and
That's what you're queuing in on?
yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yep. That's good stuff. What have you been looking at so far? How's your summer going?
I mean, I got a list that's like a foot long of cameras that I need to go put batteries in. And
So you haven't put too
Alright.
many out so far?
I've been pulling them in.
Okay.
Um,
Ones you put out last year?
Yeah,
so-
last
yep.
year, the ones that I've let soak all year, and just figuring out what cameras I'm going to be putting back in the same spots, and what ones I'm going to relocate
Yep.
because it seems like 2 out of 10 cameras that I let soak all year I'm putting in new areas
Mm-hmm.
because it's not what I'm looking for. Buck wise, because especially in the Northeast, I'm definitely trying to target the upper scale of bucks.
Yeah.
If I can help it.
Yeah.
And you really got to move around to find those big ones.
Yep.
But that's my favorite strategy with game cameras is just taking those regular cheap Tascos or whatnot, the $20, $30 cameras, setting them out on a scrape in August, pulling them in March, seeing what's kicking, and
Yep.
then going from there.
Yeah. On a side note, do all of us use those cheap $30 Tascos?
I don't have any yet, but I'm going.
You're gonna get, dude. Those are the best value I've ever seen out of a camera. I mean, the
They're
one
awesome.
dies on you. Screw it. We talked about that in the first or second episode, but like, yeah, if you want to put a lot of cameras out, that's
Yep.
one to use.
I just got a deal on wild game cameras on
yeah.
their website. It was 4 cameras. They all came with batteries and SD cards for $120.
Can't beat that.
So that's pretty good.
Wild Game's a good camera too.
I mean,
They usually can always take a picture for you.
it's
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
I
Tasco
bought 2
level.
today with 2 cards and batteries for $125, so I'd say it's a real good deal.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And back to checking spots, I think it's what me and you have checked a handful of spots every week, and it seems like every 3 spots we go to, we find a good area.
Yes.
So it's not every spot you go into is gonna have a good bucking around there.
Yep.
It seems like you got to bounce around and try to
Yep.
find. Those
It's always the
spots.
last spot of the day too.
Yep,
With you and me,
Yeah.
we always go into a spot gung ho, ready to friggin' go, and nothing. And then we drive an hour and we get into another spot,
Hike all
sweating our
around.
frickin' butts off. Do it all over again. Nothing. And then the last spot of the day when we're dragging, it's like almost the last spot we want to check.
or the furthest spot out.
Yeah,
the
the other
last
way-
spot.
That's the one where we find
Yeah.
good stuff. And it happened that way shed hunting this year
yeah,
too.
exactly.
Oh,
Multiple
man.
days we
Yeah.
had that same occurrence. So
Oh man.
Law averages, you're gonna check more spots, you're gonna find more.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah,
Just
just
gotta
gotta get
bounce
out
around.
You
there.
gotta bounce around, man.
If
That's
you're not happy with what you're seeing, you gotta just go to a new area.
just
Yep.
move.
Yeah.
Keep eyes on X and Google Earth and keep checking
Yep.
for sure. Yep. I haven't made it up to Maine yet this year, but we're gonna go take a trip up there and put some cameras up. But earlier in the year, I think it was in May, or at the beginning of May, my boss went up, which him and I are good friends, and we do some hunting together and stuff. And he put some cameras up on a few areas where I had some good bucks last year. And there's this one area way up high up on the mountain, up above some like 3-year-old cuts. There's this moose trail. It's about as wide as this pool table, just beat right into the ground. But there's always like a heavy 200-pound buck. Just the biggest track I've ever seen is up there. And he put a camera on that when he was up there in May. And I'm excited to see what's on that one for sure.
That's exciting.
And then, which is kind of a little bonus for him. So he was up there. He bought a turkey tag just by chance.
Yep.
Way out in the middle of nowhere. He's driving down a logging road. Tom crosses the road, like 200 yards down the road. Pulls his binocs out. Things going up in the cut. He goes down there and swings around up above the cut, and he ends up getting a tom out there in the middle of nowhere.
No kidding.
And the people at the reporting station are like, "We've never heard of anybody shooting a turkey out there." Just literally miles and miles out. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
But pretty cool stuff.
So switching gears a little bit, do you guys really think about your access when you're especially like bow hunting or sitting in an area on bare ground? Do you guys like really worry about your access?
Yeah, I think especially sitting, kind of got to. If
Yeah.
you're blowing them out when you're heading in there, there's really no point in sitting there all day. So
Right.
something to keep in mind, which way the wind's blowing and where you think they might be feeding that night if you're heading in there early in the morning or even in the evening. If you think they're bedding somewhere and you're walking up through there, well, you're kind of kicking yourself in the butt. So
Yeah.
I agree. I know one thing that I always try to do, and I've been successful doing it a few times, is if I find an area that I really like, I'm looking for the closest brook.
Yeah, walk up them.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
And that's what I do. I figure out, even if it's a lot longer of a walk from the truck, I will walk up a brook in the dark, in the morning or whatever. I'll walk right up that brook until I get to the same level of that spot that I want to hunt, and then I'll cut off that brook. And I've killed a few bucks that way. I think you're pretty much invisible when you walk up a brook. You're not making any noise compared to the noise the brook's making.
Yep.
Your wind is actually following that brook down through.
Yep.
And those are your two major things right,
Right.
there. You're and it's dark, so obviously they're not going to see you.
generally, they're not going to be walking up the brook anyway. So you
No.
slip in there on them and
Exactly.
you don't know.
I don't think they like to be near brooks for very long. I think they like to kind of cross them and get out of
They
there.
can't hear.
It hinders their
They can't
senses,
hear.
and their wind too is screwed up too
Yeah.
because the wind's
Yeah, 'cause it's
flowing
constantly
right down
pulling right down.
Exactly.
Yep.
So I mean, I think that's huge. If you guys listening, if you got a really good spot that you want to sit or bow hunt, if there's a brook anywhere near it, even if it's much harder to walk up that dang thing, just walk up it and try hunting that area because it is a game changer.
Mhm.
It really
Last
is.
summer, I had a spot, the same thing. I was accessing a brook there, and I went up through in the summertime and just cleared out anything that'd be in the way as I'm trying to get up in there in the morning or in the dark, just to make it easier and less noise and whatnot. So.
Yep.
Well, you think about deer do it to get away from coyotes.
They
Yep.
do.
Scent,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
they'll hit a brook and go.
They
Why
run right
not?
up. Yep. Exactly.
Makes sense. Yeah,
I think those are things that people overlook.
that's a good point.
Especially in the dark. They're just like, oh, I got to get up to my stand or my spot that I'm hunting, and
And they're looking for the fastest
the
way in
fastest A to B.
there. Yeah.
And and then also coming out of the woods. I'm always thinking about like after, when it gets dark. I'm trying to think about how I can get out of that area without kicking a bunch of deer up.
Yep.
Back down the brook.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
just
water
like-
always finds a path of least resistance. So.
Exactly that too. I call them the mountain highways.
Yep.
That's how I access pretty much all my areas.
Didn't you guys in a video you posted? I think you were filming for him. Weren't you guys trying to swing on a buck that was kept cutting above you?
That's
You
right.
kept hitting a brook and going trying to swing, but he kept
Exactly.
getting by you, right? But,
Yep.
But
And that
that's
was a funny day. I mean, I think that track that we were on in that video you're talking about, I think it was a little older than we thought.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, and I think I made a bad decision because when we were going up that brook trying to swing on him, there was a few tracks cutting across the brook, heading back down low. Connor's like, "Oh, this might be him," and I was like, let's get up above him." And I
the
think
snow was a few days old at that point, so
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to tell. Nothing
That
really
doesn't make it
changed
tough.
too much. The temperature kind of stayed the same.
and there were some bucks in there though.
Yeah, there's a lot of deer around there that day, so it's
Some-
kind of hard to decipher which is which in that situation.
Sometimes too many tracks is bad.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree. You get 2-day
Yeah.
old snow and you got tracks flying everywhere, and you're just like your mind's exploding. Like, what the hell? Where am I gonna go? Try to straighten one out.
Yep.
Yeah, you can waste a lot of time following the track and ending up right back where you picked them up from originally.
Yep.
So
You've killed a couple of your past real good deer sitting, right? Your last year rifle you were sitting, which we
Yeah.
talked about, and then your Pope and Young bow buck that was in
sitting
the
as
stand.
well. That was actually both the bucks were sitting on scrapes.
Really?
Yep. Scrapes on like a little shelf.
How are you accessing that? Just
One was up a little hiking path that people use quite often, so that wasn't really
okay.
too much of an issue.
Low
then,
impact.
Yeah, exactly. Low impact. They're used to that stuff. And then the other one was just kind of a little side trail I was able to slip in on and then kind of cut up the ridge to the bench where the scrape was on.
Yep.
And they were bedding off to the right in the thick clear cut. So I kind of had an idea where they were going to
Yep.
be, and the wind was blowing out of that cut. So I was able to slip in there from the bottom side of it and get up in there
Yep.
without them winding me.
That's a good point. Yeah. You can't. If you blow them out on your way in, you're not going to see them.
Yeah, there's no
Yeah.
point of being in there then.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you guys want to do a little transition to some
Yeah.
buck stories or what? You want to kick us off, Nate? You had one in mind. What was it that you wanted to?
Your
get the most-
biggest Vermont buck.
All
was
right.
a nice one.
So, that morning, the day before, you shot an 8-pointer.
2 days
Right,
before.
2
I think.
days
2 days
before.
before.
So me and Isaac planned on doing a little tracking. We got some snow. We knew we were getting snow that morning, and he said, "Well, don't come over too early. Come over around 8:30. Let them lay some tracks down."
Yep.
So I came over. We headed down to an area where Isaac wanted to check out, and we drive past the spot he wanted to check out, and we pull into a driveway, and he gets out to take a leak, looks down, oh, there's a big dog track right here. I'm like, oh, sweet. And then he's like, oh, there's a big buck track right here. Yep, park the truck. I'm like, okay. So we pulled out of the driveway, parked in the ditch, and it was a track from the night before. And so we started on the track, got all of our stuff, started on the track, started walking in through there, bunch of rubs. I was on the track for probably a half an hour. Well, we were zigzagging in there because he was with a doe, and we were zigzagging. He was on one track, I was on the other, trying to sort it out. And we probably only went 100 yards or maybe 200 yards.
Yeah, 200, right?
Yeah,
From the road.
Yeah, from the road. We're only on the track for half an hour. Here he comes running right back on his track with a doe.
Really?
He's screaming at me. He doesn't have a gun. The deer's about ready to run him over. I shot him twice. Right there, 15 yards?
10,
probably.
15
It was
yards.
nuts, yeah.
I'll-
That's when we first started. We were going to get into filming and stuff, and GoPro was in the bag.
Always, man. Always in the bag.
A lot of stuff happened like that when we first started.
Yeah, when we were.
Just never put the camera on.
Was
But
he with the doe as he was heading up the bridge where he picked his
he was
track
heading.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was heading back down it though, chasing her.
up once you shot him?
Yeah.
But when he picked this track up, did he have a doe on?
Yeah.
Was he with
Yeah.
the doe? Yeah.
He was with a couple of them.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
I will never forget till the day I
And
die.
that was a perfect morning for tracking.
The
best.
noise of that deer's antlers coming down off. That's the first thing I heard.
There's a bunch of beach whips, and he was running through it, and you could hear he could see the deer before I could.
Yep.
So I was getting ready, and all you could hear was his horns
Clanking.
Because he was pretty wide buck,
It
wasn't
was
he?
a nice one, yeah. Yeah.
He was ended up scoring 112 inches.
Yep. So on a mission chasing those does, didn't care about nothing else.
Didn't care. No. I mean,
How old was that track? So you had a track going up that was from the night before.
Yeah.
How old was that track, would you said, when you were 100 yards up on him?
It was
It
from
was
the
a-
night before.
it was
Still-
from the night
still- he
before.
didn't, like,
We were
bend down
only
or nothing.
200 yards on the track.
So
Yeah.
he just happened to be coming right back
He
down.
was
He was
running
probably
her-
bedded up there because somebody was cutting up there and laying
Okay.
trees down. So
Yeah.
He came back down his back trail.
Yeah.
he was running her right back down that track, and man, I'll never forget because I was kind of on the trail that the deer were going up. Nate was kind of swinging off to the left because I think the buck had actually swung.
Right.
I was on the doe's tracks, and Nate was swinging on the buck's tracks, and we were just trying to kind of sort it out. And the doe was actually kind of running down towards Nate, and the buck was running
Straight, trying to cut
right
her off.
at me. So I'm sitting there, no gun, yelling at Nate, Nate, shoot, because the buck is running right at me, full tilt. And when Nate pulls up and shoots that deer, he literally flopped in front of me at like 5 freaking yards, dead, laying there. And I'm just like,
I shot him twice.
oh my
It happened
gosh.
so quick the first time I didn't even have the... I only had the bead on him. I didn't even have him in the peep.
Oh
And I hit
my
him.
gosh.
That's how close he was. And then I finally pulled up the rest of the way and shot him again.
Jeez.
It was so crazy. If I would have had a camera going on that,
Oh,
I mean,
it
I
was
was 1 in a
nuts.
million footage. And I mean, we'll have more stuff like that happen, but it's just funny. You know, we were just getting into the filming, and I wish I was rolling for that. Man, it was such
You don't
a
think it's
crazy.
going to happen that...
You were
Yeah,
playing
so-
the woods for half hour, you said.
Yeah.
What did he weigh?
Least expected.
187.
187. Yeah, he was a good buck.
That's your biggest buck, biggest Vermont buck.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's Danny. I
Biggest Vermont buck.
think that's the first year I saw you guys because you got one the day
Yeah.
before. You guys had a picture
Yeah.
together. I think it was right. Which
Yeah.
that one, right?
Yes. Yep, that one I
Yeah.
got a couple
Yeah.
days before
Big
with my
6
wife.
or it's almost what 8? Is he
I
an
call him an 8.
8? Yeah, he's got his numbers there.
He's a half-ass 8. But
The only
Cool rack though.
Yeah.
the only 2 I've shot have been in about a half an hour tracking. So
That's the way it goes.
can't beat that. I
I've killed a
guess,
couple
but
like that.
I followed a lot longer than that.
Mhm.
Shoot him when you can get him.
That's right.
Yeah, you're gonna have the days where you're going 20 miles and never catching that deer, and you're gonna have the days where you go 30 minutes and oh shit, there he is.
Yep.
I've had that before.
That's the
A
way
lot
to
of
do
guys
it.
have. For sure. What do you want to hit us with a buck story, Connor? What do you got? Anything come to mind?
Might take me a minute.
Nate, you want to talk about your big 6 you shot in Vermont?
Oh yeah, let's do that. And then you think for a
Yeah.
minute, Connor.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
And this, let me just set the scene real quick. This buck is a monster 4-pointer. Like, I'm talking 100 inches of a 4-pointer.
Really? I don't think I've
And
seen this one. You
with-
have to show me this
with,
one after.
With big brow tines. So he's a 6, but he's just this freakish looking. I mean, I think he scored just a hair under 110.
Yeah.
That's a 6-pointer.
I think
That's a
you
6
scored
pointer.
him at like 104 or 106.
106,
It's a heck
yeah.
of a buck.
But he's a good one. He's a
Yeah.
really good one. Just poor genetics, but
Yeah.
I think it's an
That's all he
interesting.
would have been. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
I
Interesting
followed
story.
him for the whole year pretty much. So I set cameras out and started getting pictures of him, and I knew he was a big one because he had huge bases. And I used to go up and sit in a stand, and I'd see him come out and do a field with,
In the summertime.
in the summertime
Yep.
with other deer. So I'd watch him all summer long, videotape videos of him and stuff, and just pretty much that was the first one that made me really obsessed with deer hunting.
Yep.
Was that buck. So spent a lot of time watching him, checking trail cameras, and I ended up sitting that morning. It was the first morning. I can't remember what year it was. 2012, I think it was. And sat there for a couple hours, nothing. Turn around and look, and he's out there in a field. The field I was sitting next to with like 4 does. I pulled up and I shot him. Ended up shooting him like twice, but he was the biggest buck I shot at that point of time. He was 177 pounds, I think he ended up dressing out at.
Beautiful buck.
Yeah, he was a giant.
That's a good one.
This area, this ridge right over here.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, just the other side of it.
No
but-
kidding.
He had big brow tines, didn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, he's a
they're-
giant.
Yeah.
He's a
They're
giant.
what? Probably 5-6 inches.
Yeah, we'll
Something like that.
throw that picture of that
Yeah.
6 up on the
Yeah.
Instagram page.
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't
a
seen
cool
that
one.
picture. So it's
He's a
showing me.
cool-
Yeah.
All right, so we got 2 stories from Nate. You want to hit us one, Connor? You got one in mind?
Yeah. The story's kind of more of a learning lesson than anything. A couple years back, it was opening weekend at Rifle, and we had a fresh snow. So I went off to a new area, and I had scouted around that day. Never caught anything big, but throughout the day, I'd taken a fall in a skidder rut.
Turn that towards you a little bit there. There we go.
So I slipped in a skidder rut, and my gun barrel drove in the ground. So I pulled it up, and I could see there's a bunch of mud in the barrel. So I took a stick, and I just dug it out. And I continued on with my day. Well, that night I just left my gun in the truck. And the next morning I'd gone out again. Went into another piece that I was familiar with and had a camera in. And I was checking that camera, and I could hear a couple of deer running in. So I got ready, and some doe came running in to about 40 yards or so, and right behind him was a nice buck. So I pulled up on him and I shot. And when I shot the first round, my right hand blew off the pump because I'm a left hand. And I I didn't think nothing of it, and I looked down on my gun there, and the wooden foregrip was blowing off of it. So instead of knowing something was wrong, I just racked another shell into it, and the buck was still standing there. So I fired again at him, and when I fired the second shot, the whole gun exploded on me.
Like
And,
the barrel and everything?
Oh yeah, the whole barrel and everything, and it's just like a wicked. The only way I can describe it is like in a video game when the loud explosion goes off, and you just get that wicked loud ringing sound.
Yeah.
It's like slow motion. So I looked down at my hand, and I could see a bunch of blood coming out of my hand.
Oh, jeez.
And the whole gun was just exploded pretty much. The barrel was all mangled.
Was it like bananaed like you see?
Yeah, exactly.
Really?
It was all
Just like
banana
that?
opened. So I freaked out. I called for a ride, so I ran back out to the road. And long story short, that a couple of days later, I'd gone back in there. We got a fresh snow. And I picked up a decent buck track in that same spot, and I had followed him up and over the ridge and down the backside and ended up shooting him that day. And I'm pretty sure it was the same buck that I had
Really?
shot at a couple of days prior because it had the same frame and everything. But
Got some redemption there. Then.
yeah, I got some redemption, but just a big learning lesson to always keep some tape or something on your muzzle of your barrel.
How bad was your hand?
It wasn't terrible. It could have been a lot worse. My fingertip was exploded open a little bit, but
Did you have stitches?
no stitches. No.
No.
It just they glued. Yeah. They glued it up, and then I had some metal in my hands I had to dig out.
Oh.
Other than that, though,
Oh
Was that a 7600?
that was a 7600.
Blew it right
Yeah, the whole barrel would just split right down to the chamber, and you can see the shell casing in the chamber that's split open as well.
We could put a picture of that on.
So,
Yeah, you got a
that's
picture of that?
Yeah.
We'll put
I
that
got a
on the
picture of
Instagram.
that. It's
That's
actually
great.
hanging with a rack at home, so.
Really? I never heard
Big
anyone
wall
blown up a
decor.
7600, so
Yeah.
that's interesting.
No, there's a lot of pressure in the barrel when that happened because the first round actually got stuck where I dug down into it. I pushed the mud down into the barrel a couple inches, and it froze up that night in my truck. And obviously the first round just got lodged in the barrel, and then the second round
That's wild.
backed it up, blew it open.
Jeez.
You have bad luck with that. You were saying you blew a bow up earlier
Oh yeah,
today.
yeah, pretty bad luck with weapons.
But you have good luck too.
Yeah, I guess so. It goes both
Was that
ways.
your only 7600 at that time, or did you get another one?
I believe that was my first 7600 I bought, and then a couple of days later I was able to pick up another one. That was before the
Yeah,
prices went up.
Back
on
when you
them.
could actually get them?
Yeah, you could actually
Yeah.
get them back then, but no, that was just a eye-opening experience to always keep your muzzle cleaned out and either put tape over it or just keep it clean if you fall. Just
Yep.
something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I bet you checking your barrel
Yeah,
after
oh yeah,
that.
I'm always checking it. Whenever I fall, I always just pop the shell out and look down and make sure I can see through it.
Did you kill that buck a few days later with the new 7600, or did you have a different gun?
That was a different gun. That was
Yeah.
actually my father's old 7600. So.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, my hand was all wrapped up that day, and I had a winter hat over my hand, so the gauze wouldn't get all wet. It was my hand.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, you
It
gave
was-
him a chance.
Yeah, I gave him a chance, so he didn't get out of the area. So
No kidding.
You
That's a
learned from that
wild
one.
story.
yeah,
Jeez. You got,
some-
what's that? Sorry, keep
it's
going.
just something to keep in mind to make sure your muzzle's always clear.
I would say.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
pretty gnarly.
You just slipped right in a skidder rut? That's all it was?
yeah. I slipped. I just was walking through a little bit of snow and just went down. And my barrel just jabbed in the ground a little bit, and I took a stick and just tried digging it out, but I must have just pushed it down in there a couple more inches.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's still dirt in there.
Yeah. Got to get a picture of that one up
Yeah,
on the
I'll
page
take
for
one.
sure. Huh. All right, you guys want to switch gears here a little bit? You want to talk a little bit about self-filming and stuff like that for people
Sure.
that want to learn it?
Yeah.
Why don't you kick us off, Isaac? Kind of talk a little bit about your setup, what you get going with self-filming, and what you do.
Yeah, well, I put a GoPro right on my head. I got a head strap, and I got it on quick capture mode, which means all I have to do is click the button. It turns right on, starts recording in like 2 seconds.
Yep.
So it's pretty convenient. The only thing you really have to be conscious about is your battery life, especially if it's cold.
Yep.
I like to, run 20, 30 minutes on a battery, and I'll switch it out.
That's about what you're getting out of the new GoPros?
Yes, you can get more, but I just like to try to keep a fresher one in there, especially if something crazy happens, like, maybe you have like a standoff with a buck and you want it to run for,
Yep.
long amount of time. Also, changing the batteries is something that, you got to get used to, but it's a good time. You have to get good at knowing when's a good point to, sit there and change a battery.
Yeah.
It's got to be at a point where, maybe you're going through some real thick crap and, or maybe you get to a brook and you got a second, you got a lot of, noise cover and everything. You have no chance of seeing a buck, change a battery out. And, yeah. Another thing that I've learned is I try to keep the batteries kind of close to my chest.
Yep.
I put it in my chest pocket, in my coat, to kind of keep the body heat. I think the body heat like helps batteries.
Yep.
Last
a
a
little
little longer. But man, I'm telling you, when it gets real cold, I don't care how new or good the batteries are, they're gonna be weaker.
Yep.
But you know, Connor and I have also, and Nate and I have also messed around with a handheld camera, filming each other, and that's really cool. We've yet to kill one like that, but we will.
Yeah.
We've been doing it.
Back to the GoPros, though. You also should have a big SD card. I don't know how many
Yes.
times I go to flip it on, it says SD card full. So
Yeah. I mean, you
They
can get
fill up
those.
quick.
You can get those micro SDs up to what 128 now or bigger, right?
250.
Can you? Is it that what it is now?
258 even.
I got a 400 for my 7.
For a micro?
Yeah, I got a 400, and they make terabyte SD.
Oh, they do? They're that big
Yep.
now? Wow.
Yep, they're expensive. And another thing to kind of think about too is if you're looking to film real high quality stuff, you can't get those big SD cards. They have to be kind of smaller because for the 4K footage, they have to be like, I think they're called like number 1. They have like a 1 on them.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it says on them, but it has to be like super high quality. It's meant for like 4K.
Yeah.
And the ones, like I know when my 400 gig SD card for my GoPro 7, you can't shoot like super high quality film on that.
Really? Just not formatted for it?
Yep. I'm shooting like, I think it's like 2.7K, which
I think it's 2.7 now with 30 frames.
30 frames, and you can do 400 gigs of that.
Really?
But you cannot film like super high quality stuff, like 4K at 60 frames.
Yep.
You can't. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole to get down
yeah.
on. It is like frame rate, and basically the higher the frame rate you shoot, the more like fluid, I guess is a good way to say, your footage will be.
Yep.
So like I like to shoot 60 frames per second when I'm hunting, because you can really be moving around, and the footage will be very smooth.
Yep.
You know, if you drop down to like 24 frames or around that area, your footage is not going to be as smooth.
Yep.
I also like to shoot super wide angles with the GoPro. I think that's better for hunting because you have more field of view, and then you can kind of crop and zoom in where the buck or deer might be in the frame. The only thing with when you are shooting that super wide frame, sometimes things will look kind of rounded on the screen when you're watching it, but I mean, it's just a thing, you gotta live with. You know.
Yeah.
There's
You're not gonna get so good with GoPro.
Yeah, and they're good. The
Just the way it
GoPros are
is.
crazy
Yeah.
good.
They get
You
better
can
every year.
shoot regular frame. I can't even think of the name. Regular view, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And that footage is more, it's more, I guess the word I'm looking for is like, it's more zoomed in kind of, and like the trees and everything look a lot more straight and like natural.
Yeah.
But when you have that super wide angle, you're able to pick up a lot more of like what your eyes are seeing, but things kind of look kind of curved.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, I agree. I know
But,
what you're talking
but
about.
that's what I like to shoot in. I like to shoot in the super wide view, 60 frames per second. I love 4K.
Yep.
You can crop in, you can zoom in a long
So you
ways.
can always zoom in on
You
a
can-
buck taking off. or
Yeah,
whatever.
you can zoom in a lot, and the footage is. I mean, the GoPros are incredible. I don't know why everybody's not filming with them for hunting, because they're like the best invention ever for self filming.
Yep. Especially the new ones. The new ones are crazy.
I mean, I got a 10, and it's sick. Like, it's got the action tech or whatever it's called. So basically, when you move, it like smooths out your footage. Like, it's
like an internal gimbal, right?
It's got an internal gimbal.
Yeah.
So like when we film with my DSLR camera, my Canon, my handheld camera, you really get that shake when you're walking and you're moving, and you
and that's hard to watch for somebody.
And it's hard to watch,
Yeah.
and I end up editing a lot of that stuff out. But man, with that GoPro, it's just smooth as butter because it's got that internal gimbal.
Yeah, just balances it right
And
out.
once you get used to just clicking that one button to turn it on, kind of becomes just instinct.
Exactly.
Reach up there and press it once, and it's rolling. So
Yep. It's real easy. It's just like having a second safety.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
the hardest thing to get used to.
I was gonna
It
say
is.
that's what you
Yeah.
gotta learn first, right?
Yeah, you got to give up a few seconds of, maybe not getting that deer or whatever.
Right.
to
Standing
turn
there
that
looking
on.
at
Yeah.
you.
Right.
Yeah.
So
You're right.
Yeah, it's real easy to not turn it on until after.
yeah.
It's hard to get it on before you pull the trigger, man. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
That's why it's nice to have a good battery and a big SD card so you can keep it rolling if you think you're getting close to them.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And I haven't timed it yet on a deer to where I had one rolling already before I shot. I've turned like the mass buck I got this last year. I turned it on when that thing was running at me.
Mhm.
I clicked it on and I ended up getting the shot on film. But I think that's definitely like the holy grail of footage would be to be tracking a buck when you think you're close, rolling, have the thing jump up and shoot it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a lot of people doing that, if any.
No.
If any. Most of the shots that you see, they're clicked on and then, shot.
Yeah.
I had found a few sheds this year, which I'm going to be releasing some of that footage soon on my YouTube page, where I was rolling, like just raw footage, and find the shed.
Really?
And that's, pretty
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited when I find it. But I've yet to do it on a deer. That's a goal, though.
Yeah.
Maybe this year.
So, yeah, maybe this year.
All right, so the last little segment, I know a lot of guys hunt out of camps and hunting groups and stuff, and, you, Connor, and Nate, you kind of attack some areas as a group sometimes, and I think you talked about it in Pat Guyet's podcast. So why don't you take us through a little bit about, how you guys hunt New Hampshire together this year, how you attack an area. I'll have Nate hop on this mic, and you guys can go from there.
Okay.
You want to talk about the mass?
Yeah, the mass deer.
Mass deer, that one kind of worked.
Yeah.
Bounced around a couple areas.
Yeah. So basically, when we group hunt, we all try to hit it at different angles. Like if we get into a ridge, we all, we're all heading into an area where we think there might be deer. We're working towards each other. One thing that I think is important when you're group hunting is if you have a selfish person in your group, it's never going to work. So even if you're just two guys, if you got two guys and one guy is a selfish deer hunter and he's not going to be sharing information, he's going to go quiet on the radio, that it's just not going to work. It's going to make for a lot of headaches and sour times. If you're going to hunt with a group of guys, you really got to be all in for killing a deer.
Yeah. The end result is dragging a deer out to the
Yeah,
truck.
It doesn't matter who shoots it.
And
That's right.
Yep, and then the next one, somebody else is gonna get him, so
Right.
it doesn't matter.
One thing I want to hit on real quick before we go any deeper with what we're going to talk about, the mass buck, but the rule that we go by, and I think it's a really good rule, is when we're group hunting, it's first blood. It's his buck. So whoever draws blood first, it doesn't matter if the rest of the group puts 6 bullets each in the deer. It's
Yep.
the person who drew the first blood. It doesn't matter if it's a haircut. Doesn't matter if the deer gets shot in the hoof. Doesn't matter.
Right.
That's a really
Yep.
good way to go about it because
That's the only fair way.
it's the only fair way. There's no hurt feelings, it's fair.
Yep.
You're the one who drew the first blood and got the
mean,
deer
It's your
leaking.
deer, yeah.
We've had multiple times where we've all shot into
Oh
the
yeah,
same deer through the day.
exactly.
Like, all that matters is getting him dead and getting him out to the truck.
That's right. And I
End
mean,
of
we're
the
all
day.
we're all hunting for the same reason, and that's providing our families with good meat and the memories that we make along the way. So who cares who's really killing the deer at the end of the day?
We're all gonna get one.
We're all gonna
Yeah,
get one.
so-
Exactly.
At least once.
yeah.
Unless you're Connor, you shoot 12.
Yeah, right. Unless you're Connor Schellong, killing $6 a year, son of a gun. But
But it can be pretty effective though, just going into an area, couple different guys, and just splitting up, and just heading off. And
Yep.
if someone finds something better than the other, then just work towards that area.
right,
If there's-
Generally, we get into deer if
We
there's
do.
a deer in there.
Yep. If there's nothing, then we all leave.
Right.
Exactly.
Go find one somewhere else.
so that mass buck that I shot last year, we started that morning in an area. We all did like a 2-mile speed loop, and we all kind of concluded that the area kind of sucked. So we all got back in the truck, we regrouped, and we headed like an hour. What was it, hour and a half
Yeah.
south of
Yeah.
there to a new area that we had found on the maps, and we were, let's hit this area.
Right. We
And-
checked one spot first too along the way down there. We just weren't super satisfied driving the roads around there, seeing what we were
Exactly,
seeing.
yep.
Lack of snow. So we
Yep.
figured we'd keep heading to a different area until we found what we liked. So
Yep. So we got in that area where we ended up killing one. And the way we did it is we were walking in as a group. Nate cut up on the mountain first. Connor and I kept going. Then Connor headed up the mountain about 200-300 yards past Nate.
Yep.
And then I just kept going out straight. And we just kept on communicating with each other and telling each other what we saw. And as soon as I jumped the pile of deer and knew that the buck was in the group of deer that I jumped, I had texted both of you. Actually, I called both of you. I'm pretty sure. I called Connor first. I said, Connor, where are you at? He told me. He's like, oh, I'm up on top. Of course. He's a freaking Indian, runs through the woods. He's already on top of the mountain. I'm like, all right, man, I'm on a big buck. He's kind of heading up like your way a little bit, just, be on edge. And I called Nate. I got figured out where you were at, and he was the buck was actually heading right towards you.
Right. Well, before that, me and Connor both walked over the track.
Right.
Right. Because I texted both of you guys, said, "Oh, there's a buck and a couple doe in here."
We were just on a mission heading to the top.
Yeah, being the first one up, I was already past the track. Connor went past the track, and I was like, "Yep, Isaac's not passing that track." So,
and it was headed down Isaac's way. So instead of me hopping on it, knowing I'm
it didn't make
down
sense.
where he was, I figured he was gonna hop on it because he's gonna cut it somewhere down there.
We pretty much just put ourselves in the best place we could for if it didn't work out with you tracking him, somebody was gonna see him.
Right, and I think that's important. The way we share information while we're party hunting, basically, is what we're doing. We're party hunting. I'm on the track. Nate, he's heading towards this knob. That's where you kind of set up, and we're waiting. So if I
was right on his back track.
If I would have jumped him, he would have headed right towards you. Connor, you were up on top, so if I would have jumped him and he would have swung up around, you might have got a crack at him.
Because he actually crossed my tracks, you said, didn't he? My boot tracks heading up.
He did, yep. And I mean, I think that's it's super important. If you're going to hunt with a group of guys, you have to be open and communicate, and that's where you're going to get your best results.
Trying to get ahead of the buck.
Yep.
They're in way better shape than any of us. So
absolutely.
Anything we can do to
maybe
get
not
somebody
Connor,
in front of them. Right, I agree.
Connor runs through the woods. Savage, I'm telling you. But, I mean, I think it's super important. If you're going to hunt with a group of guys, y'all better be communicating on the same page. And if you got that sour apple, just don't hunt with them.
Yeah.
Because
it's not gonna work.
We've all hunted with that guy who gets mad when somebody else shoots a deer. And, it sucks because those guys aren't going to have a lot of deer hunting friends.
Takes the fun out of it.
It does. Yeah. It really does. And, we've all been in the situation where, if there wasn't our buddies in the area, we wouldn't have gotten the buck.
Right. Exactly.
I would all get the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also nice to have a couple buddies help drag it out after. Too.
Heck yeah. Yeah, that's the best part of party hunting. And I really love hunting with a good group of guys because you just get to share the experience, and it's this lifelong friendship that you're creating,
Oh, yeah.
We're all doing the thing we love to do. And
we all get the excitement, too, once we walk up on that big buck laying there.
Yeah.
So.
I still have the footage of you when you ran up on me. There's a few too many profanities.
I ate crap out how many times running through the woods.
I remember I called Connor first after I killed the deer, and I was like, 150, 150, 150. That's all I could say was 150. He's like, no. I'm like, dude.
And I'm just running your way at that point. I just heard
he's like, drop me a pin. I was like, I'm trying to calm down. 150, 150. And then I called Nate, and he's like, dude, go put your hands on him. I was like, I can't move. 150, 150. Oh, my God.
I don't even think you got up to the buck by the time I got there.
No, I mean, you were running.
Yeah.
Good times for sure. And then the buck, the last day of the season, Nate, you didn't end up going that day.
No, I didn't.
But it was
because you were down there the day before, weren't you?
Yeah, me and Justin went.
Yeah, my father-in-law. Yeah. And so the last day of the season, it was myself, my father-in-law, and Connor, and we were all hunting this new ridge we'd never been at. And we were sharing information like we do, and Connor comes over. He texts me. He's like, I just saw a buck. Do you think I should shoot it? I was like, yeah, dude, it's the last day. What do you mean? Come on. And he's like, all right. So Connor being Connor, he's like a cat playing with a mouse before he kills it. He lets the deer. Yeah, he lets the deer walk off. And as he lets the deer walk off, I see a bigger buck. Couldn't get a crack at it. And I get on the radio. I'm like, Connor, I just saw a big buck. Justin, I just see a big. He's heading up towards this ridge or whatever. And Connor's doing a full-on Indian sprint out around this knob to try to cut off the buck he just let go, and shoots it on the run. It was a fun time. But
After I shot that buck, though, Isaac gets on the radio telling me he just saw a nice buck down below me and it's coming up my way. So I'm sitting there digging in my pack trying to get my reloads out.
Yeah, because you get 2 bucks in
Yeah,
mass.
you can get 2 bucks in mass at the time. So I'm standing there over my buck I just shot, just expecting to see this other one come up the ridge there, but he must have just slipped through the mountain laurel that was all on that ridge.
Man, it was sick down there, wasn't it?
Oh, man.
Whew.
Can't wait to get back in there.
Oh,
and see
man,
it.
me too. That one that I saw, I'm pretty confident he was like 120-inch buck, like around that area. So he was
Nice
a
buck,
really good one. But I had my peep sight, and I only had a few windows at him at like 150 yards that I could have maybe shot him, but he was just too far. But
Some of that sign, though, we were seeing in there is pretty crazy. Ridge is just tore up.
wicked, yep. Massachusetts is pretty good.
It
Need
is.
some more cameras down there.
Yeah,
That's right.
I know.
Next few weeks.
It's only
Yep.
so many cameras and so much time, though, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, we
Can't
keep
hunt
saying all these
everywhere.
spots in so little time.
Yep.
One thing I think to hit on real quick, too, is when you're running a ton of a ton of cameras in a bunch of different areas, is to try to, like, stay organized. So, like, what I do is, obviously, I mark all my cameras on Onyx, but I try to write down on a piece of paper every place I have a camera and, you know, every place I want to put a camera, because that's, like, I feel like it's good to, like, see it on a piece of paper. It's good to... It gets overwhelming
When you have a ton.
when you have a ton of
you-
them. Yeah.
It's
It-
easy to get lost in the mix looking at your Onyx and
Yep.
just pins everywhere.
oh, my gosh, yeah.
I actually found a camera from 2019 I had stuck out and I just totally forgot about it. And I just
I have
came
some.
across it this
I have a
past
few in
spring.
the woods I just can't find.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Nate and I have put a few miles on looking for a camera that we... Who knows where that camera went? I think it might be
It's
somebody
got to be
might-
there somewhere.
Maybe somebody picked it up. I don't know.
Maybe that big one was on. He'd want to keep that to
That
himself.
big one was on. Huh?
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah, I think this was great, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming
Yeah.
down and
Yeah, it was fun.
talking deer hunting. Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys.
Hey, thanks for listening. We really appreciate the support. We hope you enjoyed this episode. It was a lot of fun to record. Just a reminder, as I said before, all STAGR Gear products are available for pre-order. Go to www.staggergear.com. Get yours picked up today. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.